One moment the afternoon sky was bright and golden, and the next, thick black clouds rolled across the horizon like a wall of darkness swallowing the day. Rain crashed onto the empty highway in heavy sheets, turning the road into a river of mud and reflections. Thunder shook the ground, lightning tore through the sky, and an old mechanic standing outside his tiny roadside garage knew that anyone caught out there would be in trouble. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness and second chances still exist in this world, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Kindness Tales. Your support helps us bring more heartwarming stories like this one to life. The old mechanic's name was Booker Hayes. At 72 years old, Booker had spent most of his life repairing engines beside a forgotten highway outside a small farming town. His hands were rough from decades of hard work, his back ached every morning, and his tiny garage barely earned enough money to keep the lights on. Many travelers passed without stopping. Most people barely noticed the weathered building with faded paint and rusted signs standing alone near the road. Booker lived quietly. Years earlier, he had lost his wife, Lorraine, to illness. Since then, the garage had become his entire world. Every morning he unlocked the doors before sunrise, swept the floor, and waited for customers who rarely came. Though loneliness followed him everywhere, he carried himself with dignity and kindness. Helping people had always mattered more to him than making money. As the storm grew stronger that afternoon, Booker noticed several motorcycles struggling through the rain. The riders were barely visible through the downpour. One by one, their bikes began slowing. Then one engine failed completely. Another sputtered and died. Within minutes, 6 bikers were stranded on the side of the highway with nowhere to go. Most people driving by ignored them. Booker didn't. Without hesitation, he grabbed his old raincoat and hurried into the storm. The rain soaked him instantly. Wind pushed against him as he reached the stranded group. Their bikes had suffered electrical problems from the severe weather. They were far from the nearest town and had little chance of finding shelter before nightfall. Booker waved them toward his garage. The bikers followed reluctantly at first, unsure of the elderly stranger offering help. They looked tough, dressed in leather jackets and road-worn gear, but beneath their rugged appearance they were exhausted and concerned. The storm showed no sign of ending. Inside the garage, Booker cleared space among toolboxes and spare parts. He found old folding chairs, blankets stored in the back room, and even brewed coffee using a dusty machine he rarely used anymore. The smell of hot coffee filled the small building while rain hammered against the roof. As darkness approached, the storm intensified. The old garage shook beneath powerful winds. Water pooled outside. The highway disappeared beneath curtains of rain. The bikers realized they might be spending the entire night there. Booker worked tirelessly despite his age. He inspected each damaged motorcycle under dim lights, diagnosing problems one by one. His hands moved with the confidence of a man who had repaired engines for over 50 years. Though fatigue weighed heavily on him, he refused to stop. The bikers watched quietly. They noticed the worn patches on his clothing. They saw how carefully he counted every dollar when purchasing supplies from a nearby vendor. They noticed the cracked roof that leaked into buckets positioned around the garage. Yet despite having so little, Booker gave everything he could. As evening turned into night, stories began flowing naturally. The riders shared tales from the road, while Booker spoke about the years spent building his garage from nothing. He spoke of Lorraine, the love of his life, and how difficult the years after her passing had been. He never complained. He simply smiled and said that helping people gave him purpose. Something changed in the room after that. The bikers began seeing more than an old mechanic. They saw a man whose kindness had survived heartbreak, loneliness, and hardship. Long after midnight, while Booker continued repairing motorcycles, the riders exchanged quiet glances among themselves. One of them, a broad-shouldered rider named Marcus Vance, seemed especially moved by what he had witnessed. Unknown to Booker, Marcus and several members of the group belonged to a nationwide charity organization that supported struggling community businesses. They had spent years helping people in need during their travels. And now they knew exactly who needed help. Booker finally finished the last repair shortly before dawn. Exhausted, he sat down in an old chair and drifted asleep. Outside, the storm gradually faded. The first light of morning broke through the clouds, painting the wet landscape in shades of gold. Birds emerged from hiding. The highway sparkled beneath the rising sun. When Booker opened his eyes, he expected to see the bikers preparing to leave. Instead, he found something he could barely understand. The riders were gathered outside his garage. Several pickup trucks had arrived during the early morning hours. Men and women were unloading lumber, roofing materials, fresh paint, tools, and equipment. Others carried new signs, replacement windows, and construction supplies.